Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. We are talking only the NBA today. We're going to go through the NBA power rankings, what is going on with the Denver Nuggets, and also what is going on with the Dallas Mavericks, both of them in similar-ish situations, also maybe similar to what is going on in Memphis as well. But like I said, we're going to start with the NBA's power rankings. Andrew, you made this list. This is your list, so I'm not here to tear it down. I'm here to listen, maybe give some constructive feedback, and talk a little bit about what is going on with the top teams of each conference.
Yeah, so starting off with the Eastern Conference, my one overall is going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers. I know that this will probably be the first gripe that you have with this list, but they've just been the best team all season long. Overall, top to bottom, I probably like the Celtics a little bit more. In my rankings, I did a 1 and a 1A. In a 7-game series, I don't doubt the fact that the Celtics could beat them pretty handily, even in 6 games, where I think the Cavaliers' best shot would probably be 7 at beating the Celtics, but especially with home court advantage throughout the whole playoffs, at least through the Eastern Conference. But I have the Cavaliers my 1 just for everything that they've done all throughout the regular season, and the Celtics as my 1A. Then I have the Knicks as the 2 or 3 spot, whatever you want to call it. Let's go with 3. 4, I have the Bucks. 5, I have the Pistons. 6, I have the Pacers. 7, I have the Magic. 8, I have the Heat. 9, I have the Hawks. And 10, I have the Bulls. You can pick that apart in whatever order you want. We can just go through it from wherever you want to start, but those are my 1 through 10 in the Eastern Conference.
Okay, so I don't really have very many issues, in all honesty. I see obviously that the Pacers, based off of the seeding, are now down to the sixth team. They're the fourth seed right now. I mean, you can probably jumble up any of those teams. I try to also, whenever I'm listening to your rankings, not just project what I think or who I think is going to win in a series. Obviously, we're trying to see how these teams are ending their season and where they're, leaving their lasting impression on the regular season is, right? Like some of these teams may be peaking, others not. Playing is obviously a way different scenario. I'm not going to put the Magic over a team like the Pistons, Milwaukee, or the Pacers, even though Milwaukee doesn't have Damian Lillard. Uh, we'll start with the top, Boston over Cleveland. That would probably be my go-to, just simply because I think Boston, being the defending champions, does have a little bit of that respect going into it. But like I said, I didn't want to. I don't know if I am in the right to put Boston over Cleveland. Cleveland's won 63 games this year, and they've beaten a lot of good teams on the way. And what was the winning streak that they had? Was it 17 games or something like that? They've had some dominant streaks throughout this entire year. They've beaten a lot of the top teams in the NBA. That would be maybe the first thing, though. Maybe I just give the edge to Boston. Also, because Boston might end this year with 60 wins. They're kind of now at this point resting everybody. They got that second seed locked up. New York's not going to catch them, obviously. So, and they're not going to catch Cleveland. So, everybody's resting. So maybe they'll get over the hump. They're 59 and 21. I think it was interesting. I'm curious as to what your logic was to put the Pistons all the way up. Did you have them at 4 or 5?
I had the Pistons at 5,
Okay,
but
what was the reasoning for the Pacers dropping?
yeah, I just don't like the Pacers in either of those series. I more projected it out that way, the way you're talking about, rather than like an actual power rankings where it's like maybe the better team. But in a 7-game series, they play in the 4 versus 5 matchup. I just think the Pistons are coming out of that series. If some really good shooters, Cade Cunningham has become a significantly better leader. Obviously, like Tyrese Halliburton has more playoff experience, as like Cade Cunningham doesn't have any. But I think that Pistons team just feels like it's built for the playoffs more than any of the other like young teams or inexperienced teams, just because of the fact that they do play with that physicality. And I just like them in a 7-game series over the Pacers. And then, I like the Bucks over both those teams. So that's kind of why I slotted them the way they are. I these are kind of interchangeable. I think that both conferences are pretty top heavy, and the top seeds will come out of each conference. But I don't know. Like it's definitely, you can flip it around, but I like the Pistons in a 7-game series, which is why I put them over the Pacers at 5, even though they're ranked higher than them, but or seeded higher than them. But I wanted to like quickly go back to the Celtics Cavaliers like little discussion that we like had that we didn't kind of have. I will say, for everything that I like am given towards the Cavs, like the Celtics have had like maybe not a sneaky good season because like everyone still talks about them, but they were like still could have won 60. They easily could have won 60 games if they're not like kind of like just like reeling it, or they probably will still win 60 games. They're playing Charlotte today, so they're going to get to 60 wins in a season. They're only 4 games back of the Cavaliers, even with the crazy long win streaks that they've had and all like the different ups and downs that they've had with their season. Derek White has continued to be the great player for them. Peyton Pritchard has taken another step forward. He could possibly be the sixth man of the year. So just from top to bottom, that team looks really good, and I think that they're more than capable of defending their championship. I'm also a Miami Heat fan, so maybe take my Celtics hate with a grain of salt, but I just really like what the Cavaliers are doing, and they have a really good starting five, and some of their bench players are really good, but. I don't want to discount the Celtics at all. Like that team just showed last year how dominant they are, and what they lose like 3 games all of the playoffs. So I definitely don't want to. It's 1-1A. I see that series going to 6 no matter what, if not 7.
Yeah, I think that series is going to be great. I don't really see it going either way in like 4 games or 5 games. I think it'll be close. Cleveland's so much more improved from what they were last year, and I don't think it is Boston hate. I just that was just my only constructive thing. Let's move to the plan before we go out to the Western Conference. You had Orlando as the top team from the plan, but then you had Miami at 8. Obviously, you've kind of given away your Miami allegiance, and I'm pretty sure my Magic allegiance is also being given away a little bit too. I think it's pretty clear that the Magic are the best playing team. I don't know if any of these playing teams, though, are going to be able to take too many games off of Boston or Cleveland. But just dive into that for me really quick. You think it's Magic and Heat who come out of the plan? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it looks like the Hawks are like possibly the worst team over the last 10 games. They're 4-6. Well, the Heat, the Magic, and sorry, the Bulls are all at least 7-3 or better. The Magic are 8-2 over their last 10 games. They're like peaking at the right time, if you want to call it that. Obviously, they dealt with injuries all season long. I just think from like top to bottom, the Magic are the best team out of those 4 teams. And then if the Bulls and Heat play in a one-off game, I always, I mean, we've done it before. I'm as a Heat fan, I'm not putting the Bulls over the Heat. So I also like what we were kind of cooking here with Davion Mitchell and Andrew Wiggins, and they've all started to play like significantly better since getting traded. And Tyler Hero obviously made his first All-Star game this season. Bam Adebayo has kind of like regressed a little bit this season, but is still a great defensive player. He can guard like essentially 1 through 5, maybe a little bit less on the 5 side because he's a little bit of a smaller big. But that team genuinely is like a playoff team. Maybe I don't even want them to make the playoffs this year. All told, because I'd rather us get a better draft pick this season. But I think the Hawks are definitely the team that are playing the worst right now. And then if the Bulls and Heat are going to be matched up, I think the Heat are the better team just in general. So that's kind of where the reasoning came from. The Magic are just clearly the better team from those 4, and then it'd probably go Heat, Bulls, and then Hawks from it.
Yeah, maybe it would be a little bit different if the Magic had Jalen Suggs. Obviously, their season would have looked a little bit different if they didn't have Paulo and Franz go down due to the same oblique injury. But those are big ifs, and we have no idea. And I think we're in agreement that most of these teams, or all 4 of these teams, will probably go out in 4 or 5, maximum 6 to either Cleveland or Boston. This isn't going any other way. At least that's what it looks like right now. Let's move out west. Give me your power rankings for the Western Conference.
Yeah, so for the Western Conference, I'll list it off 1 through 10 like I did for the East, and then we can go through it. At 1, I have OKC. At 2, I have the Lakers. At 3, I have the Rockets. At 4, I have the Warriors. At 5, I have the Clippers. At 6, I have the Nuggets. At 7, I have the Timberwolves. At 8, I have the Grizzlies. At 9, I have the Kings. And at 10, I have the Mavericks. Again, just like the Eastern Conference, a lot of these play like maybe the playing teams work a little bit different in the Western Conference. I think that the 7 and 8 seed are a little bit more dangerous than they are in the Eastern Conference, but the 9 and the 10 seed for both these conferences are just like absolutely terrible.
Oh yeah, your 9 and 10 seed. Because right
Yeah,
now, yeah, but I agree.
it'll be
Yeah,
the
'cause
Kings and the Mavericks.
yeah, no, I know. I just meant I thought you said for both of these conferences, so that's why I said Miami. Or I
Mhm,
was alluding to Miami being
mhm.
the 10th seed in the East. Okay, so we have some more disagreements here, just based off of the way that I look at the Western Conference. Obviously, the 4th through the 8th seed in this conference is a lot tighter than it is in the East, and there's some storylines going on with the teams in the West that, in my opinion, almost borderline disqualify you from being ranked ahead of some of the other teams that, in my opinion, have their stuff together. I have the Lakers being probably the second best team right now, and I am fully convinced that they will be making the conference finals. I don't know if I can pick them against the Thunder, especially, by the time the conference finals roll around, we may have seen a different Thunder team. But I'm curious as to what you're thinking about with Denver and Memphis. How low did you have Memphis again?
I had Memphis at 8, and
And
I
where's
had Denver
Denver?
at 6.
Okay. So you had Denver at 6.
Mhm.
It partially because of the firings or what, or just maybe it was because they haven't been reaching expectations or
Yeah, they had their first 4-game losing streak for the first time since 2023, so that's definitely part of it. They're losing games at the wrong time. Obviously, April basketball, March basketball doesn't matter as much, but like the team just feels a little bit disjointed. Part of the reason we'll get to it, of the coach firing though, is just because it just felt disjointed. There was like a certain like there was a report that came out that like the players just like didn't were not together, not on the same page, and that was partially because of the coaching. But I don't like the way the Nuggets are playing as of late. They obviously have Jokic, but besides that, I mean, like you can count on like Aaron Gordon and like certain guys to step up for you on any given night. But I just don't like the way this Denver Nuggets team is playing basketball right now. And I said a couple episodes back that like the next time Jokic doesn't get out of the first round, call me. But you might have to give me that call this year because like this team is like just going in the wrong direction at the wrong time, and I don't like a team losing their head coach going into the playoffs. So that was part of the reason why they're like seed 6 instead of like maybe 3 or 4.
isn't that such a weird statement to say? I feel like that is not something that happens ever. And
Mhm.
yet we have two examples of it in the same conference this season with Memphis and Denver. And obviously Denver also fired Calvin Booth, their GM. So just a mess in my
And
opinion
then
right now. And there's more information that continues to come out. So that's why I'm leaning towards Golden State being that high. I have
mhm.
no faith or trust in the Clippers just because it's the Clippers, but they've got plenty of vets. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard's healthy, so that is a little bit of a game changer. Uh, but I don't know if I can really bet on them or how high I would want to put them. Do I put them above Houston? Definitely not. Not the way that Houston's playing. So my list would be a little bit more jumbled, I think. And like, hey, look, I might need to see a couple games in the playoffs to really assess who is for real or at least see some of the play-in games, get my mind right. But so who did you pick? You picked OKC to come out of the Western Conference. You have them at the top of your power rankings.
Mhm.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for them based off of these rankings that you've made?
At this point, you'd probably say it has to be the Lakers just because of the fact that, like you mentioned, at least 2 out of the 3 best players in any given series for the Lakers is probably they're going to have 2 of the best 3 players on any of their series. Obviously, you can make the case for Shea versus Luka. Probably lean Luka as the best player in that series, but I just think from top to bottom, the OKC's like the best team in the Western Conference, and the Lakers are probably the runners up in that situation. You said that they have the possibly 2 of the 3 best white guys in the league with Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic before the podcast started. And I tend to agree with that. I mean, maybe you can go down a list of white guys in the league and they maybe make a case for some other guys. But Austin Reeves has been playing really, really good for the last couple of seasons. It's been one of the most underrated parts of the Lakers in general. LeBron has definitely seen a little bit of a regression, but Luka Doncic is playing some of his best basketball. Obviously, he just dropped 45 against Dallas the other day. So I mean, I just don't trust the Rockets as that second team to kind of give. They're still 14 games back of the Thunder. The Thunder paced everybody in the West this year, and I think if the Lakers and the Rockets are to play in the second round, the Lakers probably taking like 5 or 6. So I yeah, I know, and
No,
then
I agree though. And that's no
and then
disrespect to the Rockets.
yeah, I just don't think that they're experienced enough, and I think maybe next year's their year, but or they're still probably a year or 2 away, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's one thing that we've seen in the playoffs that is true pretty much every single year, and it's just that if there is a team that comes out of nowhere, they will have to kind of learn to lose first before they end up winning. Like that happens a lot, and it's more often than not the case. And with the Lakers, I just think they got too much firepower. And when you eliminate some of these other teams, or you can't trust some of these teams, or maybe they're actually too old, like the Golden State Warriors, from top to bottom, their main guys are just older. Like
Mhm.
I just have trouble trusting some of these teams. So you're kind of left with like Oklahoma City and the Lakers. But do you want to? Let's get into Denver.
Yeah, I maybe just wanted to like highlight the list just a little bit more. The Clippers. they're playing really like I don't know how many people are taking note of them. Obviously, like the West Coast like teams like get like overshadowed a little bit more because of the time that they play at. But I mean the Clippers team has played really really good as of recently. They're 8-2 over the last 10 games. James Harden has been really good for them all season long. He's played 77 games, which I feel like no real aging superstar is playing that many games anymore, and he's averaged over 22 points a game. Norman Powell has taken another step up this year. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard has been really healthy the second half of the season. He's played 35 games over like the course of maybe their last like 45, I want to say. So that Clippers team could be dangerous. I personally like the Warriors
No,
a little.
that Clippers team cannot be dangerous.
Okay.
It won't.
Uh,
That I can't go that far.
okay.
Seriously, they could
Okay.
maybe if they're matching up 4-5 against Denver, maybe that's a good series. I see that series could go 7. No, nowhere beyond that.
Okay. What if they match up 4-5 against the Warriors?
I think they lose to the Warriors.
Okay. I don't disagree. I think the Warriors are the better team, but I have them ahead of them in the power rankings that I just said. But I think that'd be a really really close series, and I don't think that they're going to be dangerous as in like making it to the conference finals. Like that's not what I meant to say if that was the point that it looked like I was trying to make it all. I think that they could be dangerous in like winning a series and maybe taking a couple games off any of the second round teams. But I don't see them making the conference finals. I just wanted to give them a little bit of credit because they have been playing really, really good basketball. And I think that they've been overshadowed a little bit just because they've just been one of the teams that have been in that race, but nobody's really, really talking about them. So I just want to give them their
Well,
flowers.
I mean, nobody's really talking about them because they've just been irrelevant in the playoffs for the last 5 years. You just can never trust the Clippers. You literally just can never trust the Clippers. So
Yeah.
congratulations, you're 8-2, and they at the end of March and the beginning of February. Not impressed.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's move into Denver. They fired their GM and their coach last week with only a handful of games remaining in the NBA season. Essentially, what it feels like is flushing away the rest of the year, but they're obviously going to be in the playoffs. They're the 4th seed. They match up with the Los Angeles Clippers, who we just talked about. What is going on in Denver?
Yeah, not much that's good besides Nikola Jokic, obviously. Um, it just something felt off about that team for the last couple of games now. If you've been watching Denver Nuggets basketball, it just hasn't felt right, and maybe for a little while now. And it didn't feel like it was going to bubble over enough for their head coach to get fired. But obviously, we are where we are now. I can't really put a stamp on anything like too concrete, but I mean, besides Jokic, it just has felt like there hasn't been all that much to look forward to for Denver Nuggets basketball this season, which is a little bit disappointing because they're coming off championship 2 or 3 years ago, and they're supposed to be like a contenders year in and year out, but clearly something just wasn't right between that coaching staff and those players, and there was like constant reports of like there's being like just rumblings that there probably shouldn't have been for a contender like Denver. So I obviously it comes as a shocker to everybody, but there might have had to be a reevaluation in the offseason no matter what, just because of the fact that like they were starting to crumble during like at the complete wrong time, and Jokic was like one of the very lone bright spots for that team, at least towards the end of the season. So I mean, really unfortunate, especially you never want to see a coach get fired towards the end of the season, and we've seen it happen twice now. And the thing with this is like you have having no leader going to the playoffs doesn't support any case of like making it out of the first round, if not definitely not the second round. So I mean that team that could have been possibly dangerous. You give if you have the best player in the series that you're playing and solid backup guys like Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon and all the other like Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, you have a shot at a series. But when you have no defined leader and Jokic is like having clips of him drawing up plays on the sideline now, it doesn't look good for that team.
Yeah, this is a disaster, in my opinion. And there's a couple different ways to look at it, but one is I think everybody realizes when you fire the GM and the coach towards the end of the year, and you are a playoff team with probably the best player in the world. Clearly, something was going on behind closed doors. Everybody knew it. You practically didn't need it to be reported after the fact. So, what is going on? What were the issues? Well, apparently, Mike Malone was getting attached to some of the veterans. He knew the players that he trusted, and he latched onto them late in game and in situations. Russell Westbrook was one of them, and he wasn't exactly giving some of the younger guys, the newer draft picks, the run that the GM, Kevin Booth, thought that they should be getting, thought that they could potentially provide Jokic with some extra help. Mike Malone obviously disagreed. So what do you do now? Well, after you fire them and you maybe appease Jokic, who also was getting tired of Mike Malone apparently being so fiery. Well, I think you have to lean into some of the guys that are younger, that like Christian Braun, or maybe you need to pull something extra out of a guy like Michael Porter Jr., paying him a lot of money. That is how you potentially turn this around. But you don't do it 3 to 4 games out of the year. That is what is really just sticking with me. If this was done 40 games ago, we could have a whole sample size of if any of those things actually work, if the alternative actually works, if getting those guys out of the building actually helps this team in the long run. There's a lot of people who say Jamal Murray isn't durable, and I get it. He hasn't been for his career, but when I'm looking at this squad and this team, like if they're the fourth seed and you want to call that underachieving, that's fine. But that's kind of what this team is. It's getting to the playoffs, be that third or the fourth seed, get home court in the first round, and then just match up against every team in the Western Conference, try to get the finals. And this is it's just so it's head scratching because you finally have like almost made it across the finish line. Feels like the hard part of the season. I get it. The playoffs are the hardest part of the season, but the hard part is actually for the Western Conference to actually just be in a spot to be able to get to the finals. Like you're not going to be able to get to the finals from the plan, or no offense to the Miami Heat, right? They did it, but still, like it's extremely difficult, and it's like one of those things where it's like if you're going to roll the dice, you might as well roll the dice and be have home court in the playoffs. So they did that, and they still fired him, both of them. I don't know where they go from here. This is just a whole disaster.
Yeah, I mean, home court's not like completely locked up. There's only one game that
Yeah.
separates like 4 from 8, but I get what you're saying completely, and I feel for getting flack about like not playing like some of the younger players. I feel like he's done a good job of like developing Christian Braun into like what he is right now. He averages over 15 points a game. He started 75 of the 77 games that he's played in. So I mean, I think that head scratching is definitely the word to describe this move, just because of the fact that, like you were mentioning, the Western Conference this year was a marathon. Like we've come down to the final 2 games, final game of the season, and there's still like the 4 through 8 spots are still not clinched. The Lakers could still drop back a couple of spots. Anybody could still be in that play-in situation. Like none of the play-in spots, like 8 up, like 7 or 8, are clinched yet. So I just think that it's a really interesting move, especially towards this late in the season, and just a move that could happen in the offseason, quite frankly. If it's really not working out, why not give a championship winning coach a off season or a playoffs to figure it out, a postseason to figure it out. And if it's really not working, then you don't bring him back for the next season. But firing him in the middle of the season just feels like you're giving, as a general manager or the front office, feels like you're giving up on that season, and it just doesn't need to be done. Like you have the best player in the world, you can still win a playoff series, if not make it to the Western Conference Finals, and like you have a coach that has shown that he can get you all the way. So I think that we've kind of put a pin on that, but like yeah, just for both of us, like pretty confusing.
Yeah, well, I'll say one more thing really quick. Like, if you're trying to appease Jokic, I think giving him a chance to win the championship every single year or attempting to do that is the best way to do so. And if he really had an issue with Mike Malone, you should have pulled the trigger and done this a long time ago. Now it feels like the backwards logic where it's like, oh, we're trying to save this season, so we're going to clean house and try to do it that way, yet you're flushing down the season because there's no possible way that you're going to win the finals or get to the finals with an interim coach. Like that's just not going to happen. Somebody has only been at the helm for this team for about 4 games. Not going to be good.
Mhm.
But probably not the worst situation in the NBA. That being Denver or Memphis. It definitely goes to the Dallas Mavericks, or however long it feels like they're going to stay in Dallas. Not a big conspiracy guy, but this is starting to get uglier and uglier every single night. The Lakers went to Dallas, whooped them in their own house. Luka played extremely well, had an amazing first half. The sights and the scenes were unbelievable. Mark Cuban in attendance, Dirk Nowitzki in attendance, legends for the Mavericks pretty much hiding their eyes at the fact that this team traded their star franchise player. Before I toss it to you, leaving you with one thing here, Jason Kidd said in a post-game press conference that people are comparing this trade to the Babe Ruth trade back in the 1910s, 1920s, whatever it was. Boston Red Sox traded Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees, and he said that's pretty cool. Well, that was the worst trade in sports history for almost like 100 years. this one might be on the way to potentially matching or getting in the same stratosphere. That was obviously a crazy trade. So, all right. So that was just insane. We're rolling back on this same topic. What did you think when you saw this game?
Yeah, it was just I everyone kind of knew that Luka was gonna go off. He's like crying post game, like trying to hold back tears. The Mavericks fans are rooting for him. Everyone kind of is. It feels like he was done the dirtiest. Obviously, there's reports that came out after this that he had just recently bought a home in Dallas, and by all accounts, it looked like he was going to resign. I know Trae Young had his own take on that on X as well. It's just really disappointing to see where this Mavericks franchise, like how far from grace they've fallen at this point. They are one of the playing teams that you just expect are going to get mopped pretty easily, and like the 9 and 10 seed in the Western Conference, they just probably aren't going to do anything. So I it's just really sad, especially because of the fact that the Lakers before this didn't look all that threatening, and now you make it so that one of the most hated franchises in all of the NBA has a superstar for years to come, if not like a decade plus to come. And not only did you like reverse engineer your own franchise and kind of just tear your own franchise apart from the inside, you made one of the most hateable franchises in all of sports, like a ton better and maybe one of the contenders to make it out of the Western Conference this year when that was what you were trying to do with the Anthony Davis trade. Obviously things go wrong. Anthony Davis gets hurt. Kyrie Irving gets hurt. The pieces around them aren't good enough to like keep them afloat throughout that stretch where they are both injured. Kyrie Irving obviously out for the season. But I mean, just watching this game, it was so stark the difference in quality of basketball that the Mavericks and the Lakers are currently playing, even with Anthony Davis on the floor. And it's just really sad to see because you had so much potential with Luka Doncic. You are coming off a year where you literally just made the finals. That could be him on your team dropping 45 points. Instead, he's in a Lakers jersey dropping them against you. And I think the title card probably says it all. You probably need to get rid of Nico unless we talked about this before. If you're moving the franchise, then this to somewhere like Las Vegas or wherever they want to relocate, that's the only way this makes sense. Like kind of just like getting everybody's back, like to having every fan like turn their back on this franchise would probably be the way to get them out of Dallas at this point. And it seems like they're fast tracking that because Doncic stayed after a day after and was like seen like in like a Dick's Sporting Goods in Dallas, like signing like autographs and like kind of just even more like kind of like pitting the fans against Nico. Or that's not what he was trying to do, but just like showing all the love that he had for the city and appreciation that he did it. And it just bodes the fact that like anyone who's saying that he probably would have resigned is probably correct. And it's kind of crazy that they just shipped out a once in a generation type player.
It's just awful. I don't know, like, how much I bought into the whole, "Oh, they're trying to move this franchise" thing when the trade initially went down. It was something that Bill Simmons tossed out there. But I'm just starting to think, I don't know how you recover from this as a franchise. I mentioned this to you before we got on this. I think in 2 years, this team's gonna be a lottery team. They're gonna be a team vying for the first overall pick again. They're gonna be terrible. And the second player who got done the dirtiest was Anthony Davis because he's almost been put in an impossible situation. Injury prone, aging star who no shot he's going to be able to carry this franchise is now stuck in Dallas. I mean, I get it. Some people don't ever feel bad for any NBA players, but like when it comes to what is going on with this entire situation, everybody involved except for the people who orchestrated it, like I feel bad for. And Anthony Davis isn't going to solve any of these issues. Kyrie Irving, in my opinion, is gone. I mean, good is gone. Like, there's no shot he stays with Dallas. And this team isn't going to win more than 25 games in 2027. And I don't even know how many games they're going to win next year.
And like just going back to that game specifically, I think it was like a tale of two different players when you're looking at Luca and then you're looking at AD. Like that's kind of like the trajectory of which both franchises are going. And Luca drops 45 and shoots 7 for 10 from three. It clearly doesn't seem like he's that out of shape, or at least he can play while he's however many pounds that Nico wants to say that he is. And then you look at Anthony Davis. He like 13 point. He is a double double, but it's 13 and 11 at 5 for 13 from the field. Not a terrible game, but like obviously not the Anthony Davis that we can see. And it's kind of like if the Lakers are like Luka Doncic dropping 45 and the Mavericks are like Anthony Davis dropping 13. So it's just really unfortunate. I think that we can put the blame on one or maybe a couple individuals specifically. And Nico was obviously hearing it at the game. There was a bunch of fire Nico chants inside of Dallas, and just so a funny game to watch. There was a clip of Mark Cuban kind of just like rubbing his eyes and like hands in his face when those chants were going on. Just the whole day for like anybody who has like any stake in like the Mavericks as like cares about them, it probably not great. And Luka just showing you why that trade was so bad and will probably go down as the worst trade in NBA history.
Yeah, the worst trade in NBA history definitely could be. I don't know if it'll be the curse of the Bambino, but it will be the worst trade in NBA history, in my opinion, for sure. Especially one that didn't have to happen, right?
Yeah,
He didn't actually request a trade. It's clear. It's clear as day that that's not what happened. I wanted to leave another point. I don't know if you have anything after this, but anybody who said when this trade went down that the Mavericks won this deal, like when it first went down,
yeah.
Kendrick Perkins is the first person to come to mind, but there were a couple people saying, "Oh, watch out, Dallas is going to start making runs over the next couple of years." You should immediately have your talking basketball privilege revoked. I don't care what you've done in the world of basketball or anything like that. You should not be able to talk about this game if you at all thought at the very start of this trade that the Dallas Mavericks won it. Because if you want to say that, oh, hey, look, they can maybe make a run this year if Kyrie and Anthony Davis are healthy, that's fine, because that was before Kyrie went down, obviously. Like, sure, I can listen to that. Or maybe you want to say, oh, next year too, their window's still open. This is interesting. This is what they're doing. We don't know all the details. That's fine. But to outwardly say they won the deal when it first went down, I can't trust the basketball knowledge from you anymore, bro.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're going by Kendrick Perkins, he's had a lot of interesting takes over the years. So his basketball license is already teetering on the edge. But yeah, for him to so staunchly be so passionate about the Dallas Mavericks, who it might the trade has gotten so bad that people are genuine. Like there's genuine questions on if the franchise is like trying to get moved. That's how bad this trade was. So I tend to agree with you that anyone who was like super hard on the fact that the Mavericks might have come out on top of this trade, and that's not saying Anthony Davis is a star player. He's just an aging, fragile superstar who they traded for one of probably is going to go down as one of the best players of all time.
Isn't that so insane? I almost can't even believe when we talk about like what's going on in the NBA, how much of a 180 it has done since the
Mhm.
very beginning of the year. Like the ratings were down or supposedly down. The general talk, basketball discourse was down. It felt like we needed, oh my God, the All-Star break was terrible. Like we need all these changes. I mean, now we have multiple playoff coaches get fired, and we have this trade kind of unfolding before our eyes, and we have no idea who's going to win the championship this year. We got two great teams on each side of the conference that are having unbelievable years in the Thunder and the Cavs. We have the defending champion Boston Celtics healthy. We got plenty of teams in the play-in that, even though I said I don't think any of them can make any noise, they're still pretty decent teams, specifically the Magic, and obviously the Heat have plenty of playoff experience. Shout out the Heat. And then when you look at the Western Conference, obviously it's stacked top to bottom, and you still got Steph Curry doing his thing in Golden State. And I know I dogged on the Clippers. You got a healthy Clippers team going in the playoffs. That's a gift. That's something that doesn't come very often. So fun time in the NBA.
Pause. Yep.
Oh,
Uh, Agreed. Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be. The playoffs are like the NBA playoffs are always one of my favorite times of the year. They also coincide with NHL playoffs, which is just like fun having those like on back to back nights. If not every single night, you get playoff action like for like 2 months straight, which is always a lot of fun. I can't wait to see how the playoffs shake out. And I mean, Dallas is just trying to get out of Dallas, I guess.
oh man, the Las Vegas Mavericks. And we'll leave it at that. I'm Patrick Previty. That's Andrew Greig. This has been the Big Little Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.